Hi, my name is Samson. On July 18th, 2017, everything in my life changed forever. I was just another guy focused on my career, my material success, and enjoying life as I saw fit. I didn't pay much attention to faith or any higher power. Those things were for other people, not for me.
I figured as long as I was successful, had what I wanted, and was living a good life, that was all that mattered. God, religion, faith, it just wasn't on my radar. I was too busy chasing the next deal, the next adventure, and the next thrill. But that day, everything came to a screeching halt. I was in a car, just like any other day, heading to yet another meeting when it happened. It wasn't something I saw coming. It wasn't a long, drawn-out moment where I had time to react or process what was about to happen. No, it was instant. The car swerved, the world around me turned into a blur, and then there was nothing. Darkness. When I came to, I didn't realize I was dead at first. I didn't know what happened. There was no body. There was no feeling of the world around me. It was as if I had been stripped of everything that made me, well, me. I couldn't feel my arms or legs. I couldn't see anything at first. Just an endless void. It was unsettling. No sense of time, no sense of space, nothing. Just a vast emptiness, and in that emptiness, strange whispers filled the silence. Faint murmurs, unintelligible at first, but the weight of their presence was undeniable. Then, as I floated there, suspended in this eerie nothingness, a light pierced through the darkness. It was so bright, so intense, that it seemed to overwhelm every sense I had, even the ones I didn't know existed. From that light, a figure began to form. I couldn't make out the details at first, but I felt its power. I felt the love radiating from it, and it was unlike anything I'd ever felt in my life. This figure, this presence, spoke to me, and it was then that I knew who it was. Jesus. I didn't understand why he was there. I wasn't someone who had earned a meeting like this. I wasn't religious. I didn't even believe in something like this. But here he was, standing before me in the brightest light, and I was overcome by a sense of awe, humility, and fear all at once. He didn't say much at first, but I could feel that he knew everything about me. He knew every decision I'd made, every thought I'd ever had, every moment I'd lived. And then he showed me my life. In an instant, it was as if the entire timeline of my existence unfolded before me. Every choice I'd made, every path I'd taken flashed in front of me. And I realized something in that moment. The things I had prioritized, money, success, pleasure, were so insignificant compared to the things I had ignored. I had missed countless opportunities to follow him, to listen to him, to make choices that could have led me to something greater. I had lived my life chasing after things that would fade, things that didn't matter in the grand scheme of eternity. As I looked back on my life, I saw the moments I had brushed aside faith and purpose. I saw the times I had let anger, greed, and pride rule me, when I should have been loving, humble, and kind. And as I saw these moments, I felt a deep sadness, not just for the mistakes I had made, but for the fact that I hadn't truly understood the power of faith, the power of love, until it was too late. When I saw those scenes, I couldn't fully understand their meaning. But they started to appear suddenly, and I could sense that everything in my life would change forever. When I first had the visions, I didn't know what to make of them. They started so suddenly, as if the world around me had faded away, and I was seeing something far beyond my own reality. At first, it was just a feeling, something ominous in the air, something that told me things were going to change in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. But then, the visions came, and they were vivid, like I was living in the future itself, forced to witness what was to come. It was chaos, the kind of chaos that you can't prepare for. Cities were crumbling, societies unraveling, and people fighting for survival. The entire world seemed to be descending into an uncontrollable frenzy. I could see entire nations collapsing under the weight of corruption and power struggles. Governments turned against their own people. Trust became a distant memory, and the very fabric of human society was torn apart. It felt as though humanity was on the brink of something far worse than anything we had ever known. A shift in the very nature of our existence.
But the worst part wasn't the chaos. It wasn't even the fear and the panic. It was the deception. Everywhere I looked, I saw people. People I once knew. People I once trusted. Being led astray. Deceived into believing lies.
It was as if an invisible force was controlling their minds, distorting their sense of reality. They were willing to follow anyone who promised security, even at the cost of their freedom. And that's when I saw it. The mark. At first, it was subtle. People didn't realize what they were doing, what they were accepting. It was a system, a vast network of control that spread silently at first. But it didn't take long for it to take hold. A mark. It wasn't just a symbol, but a complete and total mark that would change everything. It wasn't just something physical. It was a symbol of surrender, a sign that someone had chosen to give up their will, their rights, and their identity to the system that had taken over. And I saw it placed on people's hands and foreheads, like a stamp they couldn't erase, something that bound them in ways they didn't fully understand. I watched as those around me were forced into submission, their lives governed by an authority that promised order and control. People who resisted, people who questioned the system, were isolated, silenced, or worse. The mark, I realized, wasn't just a way to identify who had accepted this new world order. It was a way to ensure compliance. It was a tool to strip away personal freedom, to erase individuality, and to turn everyone into mere cogs in the machine. And as the visions continued, I saw the gradual erosion of everything that mattered. The bonds of family, the integrity of communities, and most of all, the value of human life. It was terrifying. The world I was witnessing was a far cry from the one I had known. The future I saw was unrecognizable, filled with deception, manipulation, and a relentless drive toward control. I couldn't wake up from it. I couldn't escape it. The weight of those visions, of what was to come, hung over me like a dark cloud, and I knew I couldn't ignore it. There was no going back. The path forward was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The world was heading toward a future where the very essence of what it meant to be human was under threat. As I continued to witness these events unfold, I realized that the chaos wasn't just physical. It was spiritual. The mark wasn't just a means of control in the physical world. It was a mark that claimed souls, binding people not just to the system, but to something far darker. It was a sign of ultimate submission, of abandoning any remaining sense of self and giving in to the global machine that was slowly but surely taking over everything. The world I saw in those visions was one where true freedom had been replaced by an artificial sense of security, and people willingly traded their autonomy for the promise of safety. It became clear to me with every vision. The mark was not just about convenience or survival. It was about control, about keeping humanity in line. The system that was rising up was not benevolent. It wasn't there to help people. It was there to dominate them, to keep them in check. The more I saw, the more I understood. This wasn't just a series of events unfolding in some distant future. This was happening now, silently, under the surface, waiting for the right moment to strike. And once the mark was accepted by enough people, once enough souls were bound to the system, it would be too late to stop it. The fear of what I was witnessing was overwhelming, but the anger I felt was just as powerful. I wanted to shout, to warn everyone I could, but in those visions, I was powerless. I could only watch as the world spiraled deeper into a future that seemed inevitable. I didn't know how to stop it, or even if I could. But one thing I knew for sure. This was not just a series of random events. It was a deliberate, calculated move toward something darker, something far beyond what anyone could fully comprehend. And then the visions began to change. I saw a resistance, a small but determined group of people who were trying to stand against the system, who refused to accept the mark. They fought not with weapons, but with their faith, their belief in something greater than themselves. They understood that the mark wasn't just a physical symbol. It was a spiritual one, and they would not allow their souls to be taken. I watched as they struggled, as they faced insurmountable odds, but there was something in their eyes, something that said they would not give up. They knew what was at stake. But it wasn't easy. The system was powerful, and it showed no mercy to those who resisted. But there was hope. There was a glimmer of light in the darkness, and as I witnessed their fight, I realized that there was still a chance to stand up, to resist, to choose a different path. The mark may have been a tool of control, but it wasn't the end. There was still a way out, still a chance to fight back. As I continued to witness those events unfold, I felt a profound change in my soul. And then I stood face to face with Jesus, where everything became clearer than ever before. The moment I stood face to face with Jesus, I realized that my life would never be the same again. I had already seen things, visions that revealed a future I didn't want to believe was coming, but nothing compared to what he said to me that day. His voice, though gentle, carried the weight of something immense, something eternal. And in that moment, I felt the depth of his words in my soul. He looked at me, and I knew that he wasn't just speaking to me. He was speaking to everyone, to all of humanity. "I'm warning you," he said, his eyes full of both love and sorrow. "A choice is coming, a choice that will separate those who hold on to the truth and those who abandon it. Many will choose the wrong path. Many will be led astray." I didn't fully understand it at first. After all, I had been someone who lived my life by my own rules, focusing on success, enjoyment, and the pursuit of happiness. I had no real interest in faith before all of this. But in the presence of Jesus, I couldn't ignore the gravity of his warning. It wasn't just about the future. It was about something deeply personal, something that would affect everyone in ways they couldn't yet comprehend. Jesus went on to tell me that the choice he was speaking of wasn't going to be obvious. It wouldn't come with loud announcements or flashing signs. It would be subtle, a slow, creeping shift in how people thought, how they lived, and ultimately how they believed. He warned me that many would turn away from the truth, abandoning the faith they once held, but they wouldn't do it all at once. It would be a gradual process, compromise after compromise, giving in to the world's lies little by little, until one day they would find themselves so far from the truth that they wouldn't even recognize the path they had taken. As he spoke, I could feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. He wasn't just warning about a few people here and there. He was speaking about a mass movement, a global shift, one that would sweep across cultures, religions, and nations. The deception would be so powerful that it would draw people in, convincing them that they were making the right choice, when in reality, they were walking straight into darkness. People would abandon the true faith for something that seemed easier, more convenient, and more in line with the world's demands. The more he spoke, the clearer it became to me that this wasn't just a warning for those who didn't believe in Jesus. It was a warning for all of us. Even those who called themselves believers, those who professed faith, would be deceived. He told me that the temptation to give up on the true path would be overwhelming. The world would offer comfort, security, and a sense of peace. But it would all be a lie. The true path, the path that led to eternal life, would be narrow, difficult, and unpopular. And yet, it would be the only path that would lead to salvation. What struck me the most was when he said, "You must be vigilant. You must stay awake. For the moment will come when many will be caught off guard, thinking they have time to choose. But it will be too late." The urgency in his voice hit me like a bolt of lightning. He was telling me that the time for complacency was over. The choice would come, and many would be blind to it until it was too late. The choice wasn't just about religion. It was about truth versus deception. It was about standing firm in what you knew was right, even when everything around you was telling you to give up, to compromise, to conform. It was about refusing to let the world lead you astray, refusing to let the noise and distractions drown out the still, small voice of truth. I remember asking him, why would so many choose the wrong path? Why would they abandon what is true? He looked at me with a sadness that pierced my heart. Because the wrong path is easy, he replied. It promises comfort, safety, and happiness without the sacrifice. It appeals to the flesh, to the desires of the world. It's a path that seems right in the moment, but leads to destruction in the end. Those words echoed in my mind long after the vision faded. The wrong path was so tempting because it promised instant gratification, an easier way to live, and a way to escape the challenges of living a life of true faith. The world would lure people in with its promises, and many would fall for it, never realizing the cost until it was too late. It wasn't about being evil. It was about being misled. The enemy of truth wasn't always a figure of darkness and malevolence. Sometimes it was just the easy way, the comfortable path that offered no real resistance. That was what would draw people away from faith. Comfort, convenience, and the desire to avoid the discomfort of standing firm in what was right. I could see it all in my mind's eye. People, once strong in their beliefs, gradually letting go, piece by piece, until they were no longer the same. The world would convince them that what they had believed was outdated, irrelevant, or even dangerous. It would sell them a version of the truth that sounded good, but ultimately led them away from the one true source of salvation. And in the end, those who gave in would find themselves separated from God, lost in the very thing they thought would save them. I asked Jesus, what can we do to avoid this? How can we stay on the right path? His answer was simple but profound. You must hold fast to what is true. You must know the truth in your heart and let it guide you, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. You must remain in me, in my word, and in my love. Do not compromise. Do not bend to the pressure. Keep your eyes on the goal, on me, and you will not be led astray. His words were a lifeline. In that moment, I realized the responsibility that came with this warning. It wasn't just about being aware of the deception. It was about actively choosing to remain steadfast, to cling to the truth in the face of overwhelming odds. It was about knowing that the path would be difficult, but that it would ultimately lead to something far greater than anything the world could offer. With a clear warning from Jesus in my heart, I returned to this life, but not as before. I could clearly feel that I had been given a second chance, and this time, I could not let it pass without meaning. I'll never forget the moment I came back. I had been clinically dead for 6 minutes. To the doctors, I was gone. Completely, utterly gone. I had no pulse, no breathing, no signs of life. They tried everything to revive me, their faces grim, expecting the worst, preparing themselves for what they thought would be the inevitable result. Brain damage. The odds were stacked against me. No one expected me to come back. No one expected me to survive, let alone walk away without suffering some sort of permanent damage. But somehow, against all odds, I woke up. I can still remember the first thing I felt when I came to. It wasn't pain. It wasn't the panic you might expect after something like this. It was confusion. I was disoriented, lost. I wasn't sure where I was or what had happened. 1 minute, I was gone. The next, I was being revived. There was a lot of noise around me, voices shouting, medical equipment beeping, the unmistakable rush of frantic activity. But I wasn't aware of all that at first. All I could focus on was the sensation of my mind trying to reconnect with my body. I felt as though I was floating, as though I wasn't quite all the way back yet. Then, something shifted. Slowly, my thoughts began to clear, And with that clarity came an overwhelming sense of something else. Something deeper. A quiet, undeniable peace mixed with a deep, almost incomprehensible awe. I realized, with certainty, that I had come back from something much more than just a medical emergency. I wasn't just surviving. I was being given a second chance. But even then, I had no idea how much this moment would change everything I thought I knew. The doctors were shocked when I came around. They couldn't believe it. One of them even said, "This is a miracle." I could see it in their eyes, their disbelief. 6 minutes. 6 minutes without a pulse, without any brain activity. They had expected me to wake up either with severe brain damage or never to wake up at all. They were bracing for the worst. But here I was, sitting up fully aware, with nothing wrong. No brain damage, no lingering effects from my time in the dark. I can't describe the feeling of being alive in that moment. It wasn't just the physical sensation of breath filling my lungs or the blood pumping through my veins. It was more than that. It was like I had been given something precious, something that couldn't be earned, but only given. A gift. The reality of the situation hit me like a flood. I had been on the other side. I had crossed that line. And I was back, for reasons I couldn't yet understand. The doctors ran every test they could think of. They did scans, checked my vitals, and kept me under observation. But everything came back normal. No brain damage, no cognitive deficits. In fact, they said I was remarkably well. In their eyes, I was some kind of anomaly, an impossible case that they couldn't explain. They were amazed, but also deeply unsettled. They knew what should have happened. They knew the statistics. But I was there, fully conscious, fully functional, and completely free from the damage they had expected to see. As I lay there in that sterile hospital room, I couldn't shake the feeling that something far beyond science had been at work. Something I couldn't explain with facts, figures, or logic. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing. I had been brought back for a reason. I had been given a second chance at life, and I wasn't about to waste it. But I also knew that the person who had come back wasn't the same person who had left. Something had shifted inside me. Something profound had changed during those 6 minutes. What I experienced, what I felt, wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation. But how could I explain that to anyone? How could I make sense of something so vast, so overwhelming, that it couldn't be understood by the limits of the human mind? I had always been a skeptic, someone who valued logic and reason above all else. I had lived my life focused on material success, chasing goals and ambitions without much thought about anything beyond the surface. But now, after everything I had gone through, I couldn't deny that something greater than myself had been at work. I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that I had been touched by something divine, something powerful, something that couldn't be dismissed as mere coincidence. As the days passed and I recovered physically, my mind was constantly turning over what had happened. I began to ask myself questions I had never considered before. What was the purpose of my life? What was the meaning of this second chance? Was there a higher purpose to my survival? And what about the moment I had crossed over, that point between life and death? What did I experience there? It wasn't something I could easily describe, but it was real. I knew that much. There was something beyond the veil, something beyond the physical realm I had left behind. And I had been shown it, even if I didn't fully understand it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this experience wasn't just a wake-up call. It was a call to action. I had been given a gift, yes, but it wasn't just for me to enjoy or to move on with my life as it was. It was for a purpose. Maybe I'd been spared to share something with the world, to help others see beyond the material world we live in, to understand that life is more than just survival. It's about living with purpose, with meaning, and with the knowledge that life is fragile, unpredictable, and precious. I wasn't going to take that for granted anymore. The doctors couldn't explain what happened. They couldn't understand how I survived, why I was free of damage. But I didn't need them to. I knew something they didn't. Something that had changed me, something that no medical chart or diagnosis could ever touch. The fact that I was still here, still alive, was a miracle in itself, and I was determined to honor it. My survival wasn't just a medical anomaly. It was a sign. A sign that there was more to this life than what we can see, touch, and measure. And I wasn't going to let that go unnoticed. The real question was, what was I going to do with this second chance? Although I had been given a second chance, I knew that my life was no longer just for myself. I felt a great responsibility, and I decided to share what I had been through, to warn the people I love about the changes to come. When I came back to life, I felt something shift inside me, something deep and undeniable. It was as though the very essence of my being had been awakened, and I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't just go on with my life as if nothing had changed. I had been given a second chance, yes, but that wasn't the end of the story. Something far bigger, far more urgent, was unfolding, and I could feel it in every fiber of my being. I had witnessed what could only be described as a warning, a divine message that I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone I loved, everyone around me, and everyone who might still have a chance to understand the truth before it was too late. I remember the moment I decided to speak out, to share what I had experienced with the people closest to me. I had seen the deception, the lies, and the coming persecution that would rise against true believers in the coming days, and I couldn't stay silent. The urgency weighed on me like a heavy burden. I couldn't keep this to myself, not when I knew what was at stake. But there was a problem. I knew the people I loved most would think I was crazy. My family, especially my father, had always been grounded in the ways of the world. They weren't religious, and they certainly weren't open to anything that might challenge the life they had worked so hard to build. How could I expect them to understand what I had seen? How could I convince them that something far beyond the physical realm was coming? Something that threatened everything we had taken for granted. I sat down with my family one evening, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to tell them, I had to warn them, but I knew it wouldn't be easy. As I spoke, I could see the skepticism in their eyes. My father especially looked at me with a mix of confusion and concern. He was a man of logic, a man who believed in the tangible, the measurable. He wasn't someone who believed in miracles or supernatural events. He had seen me before, focused, determined, and driven by worldly goals. But this was different. I was a changed man, and I wasn't sure how to make him see what I was seeing. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking with emotion, "I need you to understand something. What happened to me wasn't just an accident. I didn't survive just to go back to the life I had. There's something much bigger at play here. I saw the future. I saw the lies, the deception, and the persecution that is coming for people who choose to stand up for their faith. It's real. It's coming." He stared at me, his face hardening. "Samson, you're not thinking clearly. I know what happened to you was traumatic, but this isn't the way to deal with it. You're talking about things that don't make sense. Are you sure you're not just imagining things?" I could see the doubt in his eyes, and it cut me deeply. But I couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything I had seen, everything I had experienced. I had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to warn those I loved. This wasn't a time for hesitation. This was the moment. I had to make them see. "Dad, I know this is hard to understand. I never believed in any of this before. But what I saw, what I experienced, it was real. There's a great deception coming, and it's going to sweep up so many people. The world will offer easy answers, but they will be lies. People will turn away from the truth because the lies will be so convincing. They'll be led astray by false promises of safety and security, and they won't even know it. And it's not just about the deception. The persecution of true believers is coming. People who stand for what is right, for what is true, are going to suffer. We have to be ready. My father shook his head, clearly frustrated. You're speaking in riddles, Samson. You don't know what you're talking about. What makes you think you're right? What makes you think any of this is real? It was the skepticism I expected, but it didn't stop the ache in my chest. I had never felt so alone, yet so certain in my entire life. The burden of the truth weighed on me, and I couldn't just walk away from it, even if no one else could see it. I took a deep breath and looked at my family, my mother, my siblings, each of them staring back at me, their faces a mix of concern and confusion. I'm not trying to make you believe what I'm saying without question, I continued. I just want you to understand that time is running out. You have to be prepared. We all have to be prepared. This world is changing, and the truth is going to be harder to find. People will make choices that lead them down the wrong path, and when they do, they'll be lost. I don't want to see that happen to any of you. It was in that moment that I realized just how much my family meant to me. They were my foundation, the people I cared about most in this world. And I couldn't bear the thought of losing them to the same fate I had witnessed in my vision. But no matter how hard I tried to explain, no matter how passionately I spoke, I could feel the walls going up. They couldn't see what I had seen. They didn't understand what I was trying to warn them about. Samson, you've been through a lot, my mother said softly, her voice tinged with concern. But maybe you need some time to heal. This isn't the world we know. You need to focus on getting better, not worrying about things that might not even happen. Her words stung, but I understood. They were trying to protect me, to make sense of what had happened to me. They didn't want to believe that something so terrifying could be on the horizon. They didn't want to accept that the world they knew was about to change in ways they couldn't comprehend. But I couldn't back down. I couldn't let them go on thinking everything was fine. I had seen the truth, and the truth was that they needed to prepare themselves. I wasn't just warning them out of fear. I was warning them because I loved them. I'm not asking you to believe everything I'm saying right now, I said, my voice steadying. I just need you to hear me. The time is coming when you'll have to choose. The world will make it seem like the easy way is the only way. But you have to hold on to the truth. You have to stand firm, even when it feels like everything is against you. Don't let the lies take you. Please. For your sake, and for all of us. As I spoke those words, something shifted in the room. It wasn't much, but I could see it in their eyes. Just a flicker of understanding, a spark of realization. They weren't convinced yet, but at least they were listening. And that, for now, was enough. I didn't expect them to change overnight, and I didn't expect them to instantly see the truth as I did. But I had done what I came to do. I had shared my testimony, my warning, and I could only hope that they would eventually understand. Time was running out, and the choice would be theirs to make. I just prayed they would choose the right path when the time came. Although my family doesn't fully understand, I know that I can't stop. My mission is not just to survive, but to prepare for what's to come. The greater challenges that we cannot yet imagine. After everything I've been through, I've come to realize that my mission isn't just about surviving or making sense of what happened to me. It's about preparing others for what's coming, something far more challenging than most of us can imagine. The world is about to change, and there's going to be a trial that will test everyone's faith like never before. People will be forced to choose sides, and for those who stand firm in their beliefs, the cost will be high. The persecution won't be a distant event. It's going to hit home in ways we can't even fathom right now. I've seen it, this coming trial, and I know that for many, it will be too much to bear. The pressure to conform, to abandon true faith in exchange for comfort, will be overwhelming. But I can't ignore the truth I've learned. Faith must be strong and unshakable to withstand what's ahead. It's not enough to have a weak belief that only holds up when things are easy. No, this trial will shake you to your core, and if your faith isn't solid, it will crumble. The world will offer false promises, distractions, and easy solutions to avoid the hardship, but none of them will lead to the truth. And when the moment comes, the choice will be clear. Stand firm or give in. I know that sounds harsh, but it's the reality I've come to accept. And this isn't just about surviving the trial, it's about standing strong in the face of it. I'm not here to scare people or make them fear the future, but I can't ignore what I've seen. I can't sit back and pretend that everything will be fine without taking action. I have to warn people, to help them understand that now is the time to build a faith that can withstand anything. Now is the time to prepare, not just for a future event, but for the strength and conviction that will be required to face it. Because when it comes, and it will, only the truly steadfast will stand.
When I returned from death, I didn't just come back with a new chance at life, but with a powerful and urgent message from God. What I witnessed, what I experienced, is not just a personal story, but a warning for all of us. A time of trial is approaching, and each person's faith will be tested more than ever before. We must prepare for what is to come, because only strong faith will help us overcome these challenges.
If you feel the weight of this message and want to prepare for the future, I urge you to share this post so that others can hear this warning too. Don't miss the opportunity to build a firm faith and receive God's blessings and protection in the days ahead. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any important messages. Together, we will stand strong in faith, ready to face every trial. God will be with us if we truly believe and act rightly. God will bless those who listen and follow His word.